Hello, today I'd like to talk about chapter 23 in our textbook, Figures of Speech. I'd like to start with figurative language. Figurative language employs the figures of speech. Poetry, given its especially condensed and vivid discourse, relies crucially and consistently on figurative language. They can help amplify a reader's understanding, or they can intensify a reader's imagination. In Romeo and Juliet, when the hopelessly infatuated young Romeo looked up to Juliet on her balcony, he whispered, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun." We understand this is an example of figurative language because Juliet is not the sun. My example, in the poem Sweet Like a Crow, the writer says, "Your voice sounds like a scorpion being pushed through a glass tube." And we know this is a figure of speech because it helps amplify the reader's imagination. Simile. Simile is a direct comparison using the word like or as. Your friend runs like a cheetah, or your brother's voice is shrill as a police siren. My example in the poem You Fit Into Me, the writer says, "You fit into me like a hook in the eye." We know it's a simile because the writer used the word like. Personification. Personification endows a non-human thing with human qualities. An example of this would be, "The city now doth like a garment wear, the beauty in the morning." My example would be jumping cable. When our cars touched, when you lifted the hood to see the intimate workings. Talking about referring to a car to an intimate relationship. Apostrophe. Apostrophe addresses an unseen person, thing, or idea. As in the following example, when John Keats addresses Gresser and Urine, "Thou still unravished bride of quietness." My example is Chicago, the city of by the shoulders. Oxymoron. Oxymoron combines two contradicting terms that use contradiction to make a point. Example, cold and passionate as the dawn. My example is, I am no more than upright and unset. Paradox. Paradox states a self-contradictory position to a trigger of a fresh concept or comprehension. Example, youth is wasted on the young. My example would be, Max made idea and idea held in place. Pun. Pun uses the words that are spelled or sound alike to suggest often humorously more than one idea. Example, writing with a broken pencil was pointless. My example is a noiseless patient spider. Metaphor. Metaphor compares two dissimilar things, but without using the word like or as. My uncle is a clown. My example in the poem, Metaphor, the writer states, "This loaf's big with the yeasty rising." It compares two dissimilar things without using the word like or as. Hyperbole. Hyperbole describes a thing or experience using purposeful exaggeration. An example of this would be, the shot heard around the world. My example would be in the poem Touch. My hands clothe you in further nudity. This is a hyperbole because it uses purposeful exaggeration. Understatement. Understatement downplays a description to make a point or comparison. An example of this would be, I think I know enough to hate. To know that for destruction is also great, and it would suffice. My example would be, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Synecdoche. Uses a part or piece of a thing to represent the thing in its entirety. An example would be, my best friend just got some new wheels. Wheels referring to a car. My example would be, we shall have what to do after firing. Firing would be losing your job. Metonymy. Use an identifying emblem or closely associated object to represent a thing in its entirety. An example would be the White House released a statement today. White House would be referring to the president. My example would be fire and ice is referring to heaven or hell.